Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. Just over a year ago on this channel I looked at this, the Pi case from RetroFlag, which makes a Raspberry Pi look like a certain retro gaming console. And guess what? Just over a year later, in the post, I've received this, another retro gaming case from RetroFlag. This is their MegaPi case, which makes the Pi look very like another certain retro gaming console. Even the box looks like another retro gaming console. But I'm sure it's even more exciting if we open it up, so let's go and take a closer look. Right, here we have our MegaPi case in this rather exciting box. I do like the fact that this box looks just like the product inside the box. I think that's rather neat. And in case you're wondering, this cost $24.99, and that's $24.99, £24.99 and €24.99. So $24.99 in lots of different currencies. So let's get inside. I think it's fairly straightforward. Easy for me on the unboxing stakes. It's just opens up and oh, box inside box, I think. That goes out there, and then instructions as well. Mustn't get rid of those. Oh dear, they've gone on the floor. And here we have the console. Well, I said the console itself. I suppose it is a console, isn't it? It's a retro gaming console case. If I can get inside its little plastic thing. Come out, come out. Oh, look at that. That is rather nice. That's a really nice piece of quality, that. I do always try to research products as thoroughly as I can before I get them out of the box. But I always try to open them on camera so you get my initial reaction. And I mention that because this is a really strong initial reaction. That's a really nicely made product. At least it looks like it's a really nicely made product. Now, do we need to spend $24.99 some things for a case for a Pi? Absolutely not. But if you do want a really nice case for a Pi, and particularly if you're into retro gaming, this looks to be, at least at first impressions, a really nice product. Now, as you can see, it's got a power LED. I think that actually works. And it's got some power switches here. I think this is a sliding switch. Yes, that's a sliding switch. And this is a momentary reset switch. And these can be configured internally, either to cut off the power completely, either completely or just temporarily, or they can be configured to run a script you install on your Pi, which will give you a safe shutdown. I'll say a bit more about that later on. And here, this is what will be the volume control on the console, but here it's the eject button. So if I do, aha, it's like a little pedal bin. That's like opening up what would be the CD drawer, of course, but we don't have a CD here. This is just for storage, so you can store micro SD cards in here. You could store small USB drives in there, couldn't you? You could store a piece of string in there. You could store a cookie in there, couldn't you? You could store a little bit of a snack. So if you were sort of doing some retro gaming, got a bit hungry, you could open it up, take out your cookie, eat it up, and you'd sort of increase your blood sugar levels, do better in your gaming. Okay, you probably won't do that. Now, in terms of the Pi's connectivity, as you might have noticed on the front here, we've got two USB ports, and these are extended out internally to the front of the device where we would have traditionally connectors for your controllers. Well, in fact, you'll have controllers here, just like USB to the Pi. And if we look at the back of the unit, you can see here that the Pi's HDMI connector and its 3.5mm jack just come out the back of the case, but this is not actually the Pi's own micro USB power connector. This is a separate power connector positioned differently to where you'd have it on the Pi, which actually runs to a circuit board inside this case, which will power the Pi, allow you to have a power switch, power other things on the board inside this case. We look at the side of the case, you'll see it's got this little door here. This is a sprung door over the micro SD card slot. And it's a little bit tricky to open, I find, but you have to sort of push it like that and it comes up. It's not ideally manufactured, this case, for someone with arthritic fingers, so I'll take a mark off for that because I've got arthritic fingers. But once you've got it open, you can see you get access to your micro SD card slot very nicely, and it just click that back in place again rather nicely indeed. I like the springs in this case. And then if we look at the other end of the case and maybe flick it over as well, you'll see this little cover here which flicks off very, very easily, and this gives access to the two USB ports on the Pi which aren't routed to the front of the case, and also access to the Ethernet connector. And although when you put the cover on, the Ethernet connector is obviously going to be covered up, there is here in the case a nice bit of design here. There's a little piece of plastic you can take out, so you could have an Ethernet lead coming out through there with a cover on the case. This design is really rather good indeed. So I think we should now flick this thing back around the right way, put it in its more normal orientation, and I'll go in search of a Raspberry Pi that might appreciate some retro styling. Right, as you can see, I've now dug out a Raspberry Pi. This is a Raspberry Pi 3 Model B+, but I should point out you could also use the Raspberry Pi 3B, the Raspberry Pi 2B and the Raspberry Pi 1B+ in the MegaPi case. And also, as you can see, I've got here a fan. This is a 30mm, 7mm depth fan. I thought I'd try using a fan with this because the MegaPi case can accommodate a fan, and the Pi might get rather warm inside the case. I know certainly in the old Nest Pi case I tested with a Raspberry Pi, it did get rather hot, so I think it's worth trying a fan. And as you can also see, I've got a heatsink on the Raspberry Pi, so we're going to try a reasonable cooling solution. So if we go back to the case itself, and we can just remove the top, it's not actually fastened when it comes in the box like that, and there we are. It's exciting to see inside, isn't it? And we can see here we've got a screwdriver, which with some screws I think are in there. We see any screws? Yes, there's the screws here we need to put things together. That's rather important. And then you can also see here we've got a GPIO connector which will go onto the Pi to give it power and to connect to some GPIO pins so it can do the safe shutdown. And we've got some extenders here for the USB port, or two of them, to the port at the front, as I mentioned. And there's also a little board at the back here which deals with a power input from that jack on the back of the case. So the Pi itself, if we just take it for a second and put it in, the Pi goes in like this, underneath like that. It's HDMI and audio goes to the back, and it would sort of rest in a bit like, does it click in? Yes, about a bit like that. So the Pi would fit in like that. And I'm not going to secure it in straight away because I was interested to see, would this case work with other boards that have the same form factor as a Pi? So over here I've got a Tinkerboard and I've got a Rock64, which basically have the same form factor as a Pi. So if we go back to the case, I'll take out the Pi and we'll bring in the Tinkerboard, and that should just fit in hopefully under here. So will it work? It's got a big heatsink on the Tinkerboard, but I think it'll fit. And yes, there's no doubt at all you could use the Tinkerboard in the MegaPi case. That's good, isn't it? And I think the Rock64 should work because the Tinkerboard has got a very large heatsink, the Rock64 hasn't. So will this go in? It's got a different type of power connector, but it's flat on the back, and of course we're not using that power connector. So see if that'll go in like this. And oh, that's not going to go in. And the problem, it seems, is that the IR connector on the Rock64 is colliding with the power board, which clearly is not going to make this fit in the case. And I think also the second GPIO connector is hitting part of the fan mount mechanism. So you could probably mod the case to make this fit, but in general, the Rock64 does not fit in the MegaPi case. And to be fair, RetroFlag have never claimed if it does fit in the case. I just thought it'd be interesting to try. So we'll go back to our friend the Pi, which we know does fit, and I think I'm going to fit now the fan in the case. So just has a couple of power connectors to go in here, and there they are like that. And then the fan itself, I think, can just literally clip into place. I think it doesn't need a massive amount of securing. There are screw holes there, but no, I'm sure that will hold in place absolutely fine without having any other form of mounting. So the Raspberry Pi will go on top. The fan does look rather large in there. I'm sure the clearance must work, because we've got a heatsink on our Pi, as you remember, but I just want to check. Must go in. Yes. Oh no, it doesn't actually. No, that's not going to work with the particular heatsink I've got on this Pi, which is a small heatsink, but I guess not the smallest you could have. There isn't enough clearance with that fan, and I'm sure that means actually with the Tinkerboard bigger fan, yes, you certainly couldn't fit the Tinkerboard with its heatsink on and the fan as well. So, what am I going to do? I think I'm going to remove the fan, because bit of a shame that, because I hoped the fan would work in there, but clearly it's not going to. I guess the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus has got the heat spreader on top of the SoC with this heatsink on top, so maybe that makes it slightly tall, but Do be aware of that. You'll need a slimline heatsink on the Raspberry Pi to use in the MegaPi case if you want to use that 30mm fan. I don't have any around. I know I don't. That's the only one of this size I've got in my bits box. So we'll proceed without the fan. So what we want to do now is to connect that GPIO connector, which gives power to the Pi and also its links for that safe shutdown. That goes in. I can do that without blocking it on camera, not easily, but hopefully that's in there okay. And we also want to fit in these USB headers to move the USB ports forward on obviously that port there and that port there, which go in like that. And then this will hopefully now drop into place. We can get it in, all the cables in the correct places. And that's going in, still not fitting. What have I got? Something's caught. Maybe that. Maybe that. It's one of these don't start from here, isn't it? Once it's in, it'll be fine. But yes, that fits. That's something's not clicked. That's it. That's how it's going to fit into the case. So we now need to put in the screws. So here is screw number 1 going in like that. These self-tap into plastic. I never like that, mainly because I take things apart too much. But if you don't take things apart too much, obviously no problem self-tapping into plastic like, oops, like that. Almost killed the Pi with my screwdriver, but hopefully I didn't. And the next thing we need to do is to look at this switch over here. If I just flick this round, we've got this switch here for a safe shutdown. And as you can see, the default is off, and we could flick it on. And if we do flick it on, it means if we downloaded the right scripts via RetroFlag from their GitHub and put them onto the Pi, we could use the power switches on this case, the power switch and the reset switch, to do a safe shutdown of the Pi. But I'm not going to go anywhere near all that. I'm going to leave this off so that the power switch is a direct cut of the power on the case. And I am very skeptical of using these safe shutdown things. I know they work, but in my view, the way you safely shut down a computer, including the Raspberry Pi, is to shut down the application, the operating system you're using, in the normal way to close things down. I don't like the idea of having a script which you can cut into things and close things down. It's not going to be a proper shutdown, so I'm going to leave this switch off. Maybe this is just a bugbear of mine, but that's what I'm going to do. So, all I need to do now is to put the top back on the case. Before we do that, we must make sure this switch here is off. That is the power switch, and the power switch is also off on the top of the case itself. These things have to line up, but this should now hopefully drop on nice and straightforward. It does, and then we'll flick it over, and there are 6 screws to go in the base. So I'll drop these screws in. They seem to drop in a very long way down there, so I'll put all these in place. And there we are. Did you notice I forgot to remove this cover, which now gives access to USB ports and Ethernet on the Pi? You can probably just about see them in there. One of the screws is inside the cover. They always are. What they want, screw is always inside the cover on all cases. But the Pi is now resplendent in its MegaPi case. But of course, to use it, we will need some sort of controller, and RetroFlag have actually launched this, which is a USB retro style games controller. You can use this with the Pi, you can use it with anything else. So let's just get inside. And, ooh, this is quite nice, isn't it? USB connectors you would get in a USB controller. Chris, what else will it have on the end? Not going to have a banana on the end, is it? No, it'll have a USB connector. And yes, this is, ooh, that's actually rather nice. So if we put an SD card into our Raspberry Pi, connect everything up and power things on, we can settle down with our Raspberry Pi in its MegaPi case to a session of retro gaming. Over the past few months on this channel, I've made a lot of long and complicated videos which have taken me ages to put together. And it's therefore been nice this week to do something more straightforward, to show you the MegaPi case for the Raspberry Pi, which is a really fun item. I particularly like the way the top flips up like that and goes down again, even makes an exciting noise. But now that's it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.